Claudius is in Ostia supervising Rome's grain provision. Critical labor. The city survives on Egyptian wheat, and any disruption signifies riots. He's accomplishing his duty, being the competent administrator Rome requires. Meanwhile, in Rome, Messalina is getting married. Again to Gaius Silius, consul designate, one of the most powerful senators in Rome. Youthful, handsome, ambitious, everything Claudius isn't. But here's the detail that fractures your brain. She doesn't conceal it. This isn't an affair in the shadows. This is a public wedding ceremony. With observers, with contracts, with formal vows, while still married to the emperor. The historical sources describe it with stunned precision. Tacitus composes about the disbelief, the frozen instant when Rome's privileged observed the empress acquire another spouse in broad sunlight, as if the regulations simply didn't apply to her anymore. Was it a power maneuver? A coup attempt? Did she believe Claudius was too weak to respond? Did Silius believe he could substitute the emperor through marriage? Or had Messalina reached the point where transgression itself was the objective, where the excitement arrived, not from secrecy but from challenging Rome to intervene? We don't recognize her thoughts, we only recognize her actions. And Rome, corrupt, compromised, exhausted Rome, ultimately located its limit. Narcissus, Claudius's most trusted freedman, receives the intelligence first. He rushes to Ostia, locates the emperor reviewing grain ledgers. Picture that conversation. How do you inform an emperor his spouse just married someone else? How do you make him believe it when it sounds impossible? But the reports continue arriving, senators confirming it, observers advancing forward. Now that someone's ultimately posing inquiries, the detail that seals it. The marriage contract was signed, legal, witnessed, undeniable. The laughter perishes. Picture his countenance in that instant. The emperor everyone mocked, the stammering scholar, the man who survived by being underestimated, cuckolded, publicly, legally while he was ensuring Rome didn't starve. The fury that arrives isn't heated, it's frigid, final. He returns to Rome with the Praetorian Guard at his rear. They locate her in the gardens of Lucullus, sprawling estate on the edge of the city, trees imported from across the empire, fountains that never cease flowing, the location where she'd hosted so many of her revels. She's with her mother, Lepida. The older woman is begging her daughter to act, to flee, to accomplish something. But Messalina appears frozen. Some sources state she attempted to compose a petition for mercy. Others state she merely stood present, unable to believe it was concluding. That after 10 years of bending Rome to her will, Rome had ultimately bent back. The soldiers arrive. She recognizes them. She's observed them at the palace, maybe even summoned some of them to her villa. Now they're present for her. She descends to her knees, begs, pleads, offers her offspring, Octavia and Britannicus, 9 and 7 years old, as hostages. Anything, everything. The soldiers don't respond. Orders are orders. She reaches for a dagger, someone's, maybe her mother's, maybe a guard's. Her hand trembles. She presses the blade to her own throat, can't accomplish it. A tribune advances forward. His designation was never recorded, but his action was. He drives the blade home. Valeria Messalina Augusta, Empress of Rome, perishes at 25 years old in a pool of blood on the grass where she once held authority over senators. Claudius orders damnatio memoriae, condemnation of remembrance. Her sculptures are hauled through the avenues and demolished. Her designation is carved from every monument. Official chronicles are altered as if she never existed. The message, she never transpired. But 2,000 years forward, we're still discussing her. You've merely witnessed the instant an empress descended, not to conflict, not to plague, but to the consequences of authority without boundaries. If narratives like this remind you why history must be retained, not eliminated, subscribe to Crimson Historians. Because the past doesn't remain buried, it resonates. The Roman Forum still stands, the Colosseum attracts millions, but the ruins of Palatine Hill, where emperors resided, where Messalina governed, is mostly rubble now. Tourists traverse past fractured pillars, and deteriorating barriers, capturing photos, reading plaques about Augustus and Nero. They don't realize they're standing in the chambers where she held her revels. Claudius remarried within months, his niece Agrippina the younger. She was more intelligent than Messalina, more patient. She would ultimately poison Claudius and install her son Nero as emperor, commencing another cycle of insanity. Messalina's offspring suffered fates almost as tragic as hers. Her daughter Octavia was compelled to marry Nero, her stepbrother. He afterward had her executed, claiming adultery. She was 22, the identical age her mother perished. Her son Britannicus was poisoned at 14, likely by Nero, to eliminate any rival claim to the throne. He collapsed during a supper gathering, deceased before anyone could act. The Senate pretended Messalina never existed, but the soldiers retained, the servants retained, the families whose daughters vanished into her villa and returned mute they retained. And here's what haunts me about her narrative. How much of what we recognize about Messalina is accurate? Our sources, Tacitus, Suetonius, Juvenal, were all men, all composing decades after her demise, all with political motives to portray her as a monster. Roman propaganda possessed a sequence. Powerful women who threatened male authority were always accused of intimate depravity. Cleopatra, Agrippina, Livia, Messalina, the playbook never transformed. Does that signify she was innocent? Negative. The marriage to Caelius transpired. That's documented even by her defenders. The political corruption was authentic. The manipulation arrangement existed. Individuals perished who opposed her. But the brothel, narratives, the competitions, the specific numbers, will never recognize where the truth concludes and the propaganda commences. What we do recognize is this. A 15-year-old maiden was married to a man in his 50s. She was informed her complete worth existed in her purity and her womb. She was provided immense authority but no education in how to wield it. No guidance, no purpose beyond bearing successes and appearing virtuous. And when she located a way to feel powerful through transgression, through command, through converting Rome's own intimate hypocrisy against itself, the empire that established her destroyed her, then expended 2,000 years terming her a monster. Stand in the ruins of the Palatine today and you can sense something in the atmosphere. Not phantoms. Rome doesn't accomplish hauntings like that. But something heavier. The weight of narratives that couldn't be silenced even when they carved away the designations. Because here's the truth about damnatio memoria. It doesn't function. You can demolish the sculptures, scratch out the monuments, alter the chronicles, but you can't eliminate the lessons. Messalina's designation was intended to vanish. Instead, it became immortal, not because Rome desired her retained, but because the truth, however twisted, however buried, possesses a way of clawing back to the exterior. Empires have descended to barbarian invasions, to plague, to economic collapse. But Rome instructs us something more insidious. They can also decay from within. Messalina's narrative isn't merely about intimacy or scandal. It's about what transpires when authority becomes a game, when shame becomes currency, when the individuals intended to lead an empire are too compromised to halt its decay. Every senator she degraded remained silent. Every general she manipulated remained loyal. Every observer to her revels became an accomplice, not through loyalty, through shame. She demonstrated that you don't require an army to command men. You merely require to recognize what they're afraid individuals will discover. We prefer to believe we're different now, that we've evolved past the corruption of Rome, but examine any contemporary empire, any regime, any establishment of authority. How many secrets hold things together? How many individuals remain silent because exposure would destroy them? How much of what we term stability is merely shared complicity? Messalina's phantom doesn't haunt the Palatine. It haunts every palace where authority and shame sleep in the identical bed. Marcus Aurelius transcribed something 100 years after Messalina perished. He was emperor then, attempting to make sense of Rome's endless cycles of morality and corruption. Examine beneath the exterior. Let neither the authentic quality nor the worth of a thing escape you. He was contemplating about leaders like her, individuals whose exteriors gleamed while their cores decayed. But he might as well have been warning us, because the lesson isn't that Messalina was uniquely malevolent. The lesson is that Rome established her, married her off at 15, provided her authority without purpose, then destroyed her when she employed that authority in ways that exposed their hypocrisy. Her designation was eliminated, her narrative survived. And 2,000 years forward, we're still attempting to comprehend what it signifies when the individuals provided authority to preserve morality become the architects of its destruction. You've merely witnessed one of history's darkest truths. A narrative Rome attempted to bury, but couldn't. If accounts like this remind you how fragile empires are, how authority corrupts in ways we'd rather not perceive, then subscribe to Crimson Historians and assist maintain the past alive, because the instant we forget these lessons is the instant we're doomed to repeat them.